After my wife's past love fled a hit and run, she left me to burn Reborn. I'll make her infamous to save her white moonlight, her idealized past love, who had committed a hit and run. My usually law-abiding wife not only destroyed all the evidence, but also threatened and bribed me, the sole witness, to cover up the truth for him. And Julian's not strong, she pleaded. Once he couldn't handle prison. Since you help him just this once, I'll make our relationship public. I'll even give you a grand wedding. I looked at her desperate face and nodded. My wife was instantly overjoyed, promising we'd live happily ever after. But she didn't know I had been reborn. In my previous life, I refused to lie. Julian couldn't handle the pressure and jumped to his death. My wife didn't blame me. Instead, she comforted me, telling me not to feel guilty. I thought she had finally come around. I even booked a luxury vacation package to help her relax. I never imagined that very night she would set fire to all the furniture, watching impassively as I struggled helplessly in the inferno. When I demanded to know why, she said I had caused her to lose the person she loved most, and a life for a life was only fair. I died consumed by endless agony. Now, given a second chance, I will not only personally ensure her white moonlight goes to prison, but I will also utterly ruin my wife's reputation. She will pay the price she deserves. Chapter 1. Seeing me nod in agreement, Victoria Bellwether was ecstatic. Sincere, you know I love you the most. After this is over, I promise I'll make it up to you properly. I could only find it ironic. In my last life, she'd said the exact same thing. But after Julian Vance committed suicide by jumping off a building, she blamed it all on me. Ultimately, she burned me alive. The searing, bone-deep agony of the flames burning my flesh still felt hauntingly real, even now. Julian, standing beside her, unwilling to be ignored, put on a pitiable act as if struck by conscience. Isn't this wrong? After all, I'm the one who made the mistake. I can't let Mr. Clark compromise his principles just to help me escape responsibility. I should just go confess everything. Even if I die in there, I accept it. With that, he stood up, making a show of heading outside. Victoria quickly grabbed him, her voice full of protective concern. I know you didn't mean to do it. If anyone's to blame, it's that university student. It's her own fault for being out late instead of staying safely at school. Otherwise, you wouldn't have accidentally hit her. Besides, she added, I've already hired the best medical team in the city to save her. If they still can't pull her through, then it's just her fate. Julian looked like he wanted to say more, but Victoria persuaded him to leave everything to her, assuring him she would get him out of this mess perfectly. She showed absolutely no regard for me, her rightful husband standing right there, her entire focus bent on scheming for Julian. I found it utterly absurd. The truth was, Julian had been showing off the $1 million luxury car Victoria had just bought him. Ignoring my warnings, reeking of alcohol, he had been speeding through the city streets at 120 miles per hour, which led to the accident. After hitting the girl, he didn't even glance back, just slammed on the gas and fled the scene. It was I who called for an ambulance and took the victim to the hospital. Only then did I learn she was just a university student, working part-time at a coffee shop to help her family make ends meet, heading back to campus after her shift. Yet, listening to Victoria, it sounded as if the girl had brought it all upon herself. Looking at Victoria, twisting black and white against her conscience, she seemed like a complete stranger. There was a time when she was so pure and kind she wouldn't even hurt an ant. When had she become someone who, regardless of the facts, would shift all blame onto the victim? Remembering how, in my past life, Victoria had burned me alive for Julian's sake, perhaps I had never truly known her at all. I took a document out of the drawer and handed it to Victoria. Sign this, and I'll agree to help Julian cover up the truth. Victoria looked puzzled, about to open the document. But Julian suddenly spoke up, eyeing me suspiciously. Mr. Clark, you aren't planning to use this opportunity to demand assets from Victoria, are you? I remained silent. Julian took my silence as confirmation, feigning disbelief. Mr. Clark, I never thought you were this kind of person. Victoria is your wife after all. She's just asking for a small favor, and you're being so mercenary." Oh, suddenly, as if remembering something, his eyes widened dramatically. "There were several discrepancies in the company accounts recently. Don't tell me you embezzled those funds." His tone was timid and cautious, but his eyes held a challenging glint. Victoria paused, her hand hovering over the document. Her gaze instantly turned hostile. "Sincere Clark, and here I thought you were a principled man, a good man with integrity. I never expected you to be a petty thief, an opportunist looking to capitalize on misfortune." Watching the two of them singing the same tune, I couldn't help but want to laugh. I had actually confronted Victoria about those missing funds before, but she had dismissed it, saying, "Julian works hard and is making great progress. I just gave him some well-deserved bonuses. As a company founder, how can you be so petty with a newcomer?" Yet there were so many more deserving employees in the company whom she completely ignored. Even the luxury car Julian was driving when the accident happened. Victoria had used the excuse of a project bonus, taking the entire team's rightful reward money to buy it solely for Julian. They were the real culprits, yet now they were pinning everything on me. I should have realized it sooner. In Victoria's heart, right and wrong didn't matter. Julian always came first. I didn't bother arguing, simply reiterating, "Unless Victoria signs this agreement, nothing else is up for discussion." Seeing my firm stance, Victoria was clearly annoyed, but after glancing at Julian beside her, she forcibly suppressed her temper. "Sincere, if you need money, you could have just told me directly. Why resort to this? Besides, isn't all the family money ours jointly, regardless of whose name it's under? Since you're feeling insecure, fine, I'll sign." Whether she was trying to reassure me or subconsciously deceiving herself, I couldn't tell. She paused, then lowered her voice, whispering in my ear, "Don't overthink this. Once Julian's situation is resolved, I'll return to focus on our family, and we'll live a good life together." With that, she signed the last page of the document with a quick stroke of the pen. When our startup became successful, I worried Victoria was working too hard and kindly suggested she take a good break. But she thought I wanted to monopolize the company and refused point blank. She even had a huge fight with me over it. Unexpectedly, now, without me even mentioning it, she was willing to return to the family just to protect Julian. Too bad I no longer cared. Seeing Victoria sign, Julian's face flashed with indignation, and he was about to speak. Victoria quickly shot him a warning look. Julian froze for a moment, then instantly understood. Since it was marital property, Victoria could reclaim it whenever she wanted. Realizing this, a fawning smile returned to Julian's face as he addressed me. "Mr. Clark, you've already compromised your principles for me. It's only right you shouldn't take risks for nothing. You deserve this." Watching their interaction, I found it laughable. My own wife was using our joint marital assets to bribe me, and in Julian's words, it was as if he and Victoria were the couple, and I was just an outsider. But he was right about one thing: I was indeed about to become an outsider, because that wasn't an asset transfer agreement at all. It was divorce papers. Chapter 2. Having dealt with me, the eyewitness, Victoria visibly relaxed. She was about to say something else when her phone suddenly rang. A single glance at the caller ID made her expression change drastically. She hastily said, "There's an urgent matter at the company I need to handle." Then she left with Julian. Julian was the object of Victoria's high school crush. 6 months ago, upon learning Julian was unemployed, Victoria had brought him into the company. At the time, I just thought Victoria was helping him out because of their old classmate bond, giving him a hand when he was at his lowest. I failed to notice that my wife, who for 7 years of our hidden marriage had insisted she didn't want anyone thinking she mixed business with personal matters, had started putting Julian's name on every project after he joined. She even took only him when attending various events. Some colleagues had joked back then that they were like inseparable conjoined twins, perhaps already secretly together. When I heard about it, I harshly reprimanded those colleagues. Consequently, whenever anything else came up, Colleagues deliberately avoided me and stopped bringing such matters to my attention. But looking back now, it wasn't that my colleagues were fabricating rumors. It was that I was too close to the situation to see the underlying currents between them. After they left, I immediately contacted my lawyer, asking them to expedite the divorce process. Victoria didn't come home that night, and I took advantage of this opportunity to gather all the evidence I could find. Only then did the heavy weight in my chest begin to lift. The next day, I took a fruit basket and headed to the hospital. In the hospital room, Teresa Green lay motionless on the bed, hooked up to numerous tubes. A doctor was examining her. I asked about her condition. Mistaking me for family, the doctor spoke frankly, saying a patient's injuries were severe, but she was brought in promptly. After a night of emergency treatment, her condition has stabilized. Now, we just have to wait and see when she wakes up. I felt a flicker of doubt. In my past life, Teresa was treated at this same hospital. If her condition had stabilized, how did she end up dying later? Just as I was about to ask for more details, a familiar voice came from behind me, sincere. "What are you doing here?" Turning around, I saw Victoria and Julian walking in. With them was an elderly woman, stooped with age. It was Teresa's grandmother, Mrs. Green, with whom she shared her life. Seeing the old woman's gaze fall upon me, a flicker of panic crossed Victoria's face. She quickly explained, "Grandma, this is an employee from my company. He probably heard about Teresa's situation and came to see how she's doing." She then signaled me with her eyes not to speak carelessly. Hearing this, Mrs. Green was immediately moved and grasped my hand tightly. "Young man, thank you on Teresa's behalf." Then she couldn't help but sigh. There are still so many good people in the world. Last night, when Victoria heard about what happened to Teresa, she not only helped find doctors but also covered the medical expenses. Knowing I came all the way from the countryside, she worried I'd have no one to look after me. So she came to the hospital and stayed with me all night. I never expected that not only is Victoria so kind-hearted, but even her employees are so compassionate. Julian quickly chimed in with flattery. "Grandma, you don't know. Victoria often does charity work. This is just a small gesture for her." Mrs. Green looked surprised. Victoria smiled. "It's what I should do." "Grandma, please don't worry. Your granddaughter will definitely get better." It finally dawned on me. They hadn't returned home last night because they knew Teresa's family had arrived and had deliberately stayed here to keep watch. Watching the scene, with everyone exchanging praises, I found it utterly laughable. The perpetrators had transformed themselves into lauded philanthropists. Just as I was about to speak, a doctor suddenly pointed at me in surprise. "Hey, aren't you the Good Samaritan who brought Teresa Green to the hospital yesterday?" The room fell silent instantly. The doctor pointed at me and said to Mrs. Green, "Weren't you trying to find her benefactor? What a coincidence. It's this man right here." Mrs. Green stared blankly. She had asked around extensively but couldn't find out who the kind person was. She never imagined that after all this searching, he was standing right in front of her. Realizing this, her knees buckled as she moved to kneel before me in gratitude. "Savior, oh Savior." I quickly stopped her. "Grandma, please don't do this." But Mrs. Green wouldn't listen, repeating her thanks over and over. "Savior, if it weren't for you, my Teresa would be gone. Rest assured, I will never forget your kindness for the rest of my life." I sighed. "Grandma, anyone encountering such a situation wouldn't just stand by." Mrs. Green shook her head, choking back tears. "But that heartless driver didn't care, did he? That scoundrel, I hope I never find him." Victoria and Julian's faces instantly turned incredibly ugly. They didn't want me interacting with the victim's family, partly because they worried I'd say the wrong thing, and partly to better establish their own benevolent image in front of the family and medical staff. That way, even if rumors surfaced later, the family and staff would likely side with them. They never expected that in the end I would steal their thunder. The two exchanged a look. Julian suddenly put on an expression of burning anger and said to Mrs. Green, "Grandma, don't let him deceive you. He's the hit-and-run driver who injured Teresa, Chapter 3. Everyone was stunned. Seeing Julian pointing at me, one of the doctors questioned if Mr. Clark was the driver. Why would he go to the extra trouble of bringing Teresa to the hospital? Julian adopted a look of someone unable to bear seeing everyone deceived. Because he realized I saw everything, he insisted I provide a false alibi for him. When I refused point blank, he had no choice but to bring Teresa to the hospital. Turning to the doctor, he asked, "Yesterday, when Sincere brought Teresa here, wasn't he reeking of alcohol?" Last night I had met with a client Victoria had long coveted for a project, specifically staying late to drink with him until he was satisfied, hoping to secure the deal. After leaving, I ran into Julian showing off his luxury car, so naturally I smelled of alcohol. But the others didn't know this. The doctor was left speechless. When he looked at me again, his eyes were filled with suspicion. A few people whispered, "To think I always thought Sincere was a good Samaritan. Turns out he was the most deceitful one. Isn't that the truth? I was even thinking of introducing him to my niece. Good thing I didn't, looking at him now." Hearing the disdainful murmurs, Julian grew bolder. "Last night I personally saw Sincere driving drunk, hitting Teresa, sending her flying, and then speeding away from the scene. I hesitated for a long time, but I just couldn't bear to see Grandma deceived by him, so I had to." Mrs. Green seemed not to have recovered from the sudden turn of events. She looked at me, her voice trembling. "Young man, is what he's saying true?" I didn't answer, instead looking at Victoria. Victoria hadn't expected Julian to suddenly turn the accusation on me either. She hesitated for a moment, then gave me an apologetic glance. Turning to the old woman, she apologized. "Grandma, I'm sorry. It really was Sincere who hit Teresa. I only found out this morning myself. I was planning to tell you after getting concrete proof. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it from you." Victoria's words practically sealed my fate. After a moment of silence, the room burst into an uproar, everyone condemning my actions. Mrs. Green was so furious she grabbed the fruit basket and threw it at me. "You heartless, despicable wretch, not only did you commit a hit and run, but you dare come here pretending to be a good person? If my granddaughter doesn't wake up, I swear I'll make you pay with your life, even if it costs me mine." Julian hypocritically tried to calm Mrs. Green while saying to me, "Mr. Clark, you should just confess now." Victoria sighed dramatically. "It's come to this, Sincere. Stop refusing to see reason and apologize to Grandma immediately." Even though I already knew Julian was the man Victoria truly loved, the scene still chilled my heart. 7 years, day in and day out, couldn't compare to a fleeting youthful crush. In the last life, she ruthlessly killed me. Now, she clearly had no intention of letting me off either. Since that was the case, there was no need for me to be polite anymore. I took out my phone and said to them, "Since you both insist I'm the hit-and-run driver, then call the police." The crowd also clamored for the police to come and arrest me. Julian's eyes darted nervously, but he blustered, "Fine, call the police." However, just as I was about to dial, Victoria snatched the phone away. Amidst the puzzled and confused stares, she explained, "Teresa hasn't woken up yet. If the police come now, it will definitely interfere with her treatment and recovery. Besides, if this blows up, it won't reflect well on the hospital either. Why don't Julian and I just take him directly to the police station?" Her words considered the patient's condition and even saved face for the hospital. No one had grounds to refuse. Mrs. Green stepped forward. "I'll go with you." Victoria paused, then nodded in agreement. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was watching, she whispered to me, "Everyone thinks you were the one driving now. Later, just go along with it and confess. Don't worry, I'll not only fulfill my previous promises, but I'll also transfer the company ownership to you. Once the attention dies down, I'll find a way to get you out." She sounded sincere and earnest, but I knew better. From perjury to taking the fall, everything she did was for Julian. Once I took the blame for Julian, they would just be out enjoying themselves, completely unconcerned about my fate. Perhaps the old me would have foolishly obeyed, but not anymore. I let out a cold sneer and retorted, "You care so much about Julian. Why don't you take the fall for him yourself?" Victoria, stunned that I would speak to her in such a tone, froze for a second, then her face turned cold. "What nonsense are you talking? Sincere, I'm trying to save you some face out of kindness. Don't push your luck." Julian also approached, trying to persuade me.
"Mr. Clark, haven't you grasped the situation yet?"
"Be careful, or you'll end up with nothing," I sneered. "I return those exact words to you." Julian paused, then flushed with anger and embarrassment. "What do you mean? Refusing the easy way and choosing the hard way, huh?" Before he could make a move. The next second, a group of police officers walked in through the door. Seeing them, Julian quickly shouted, "Officers, you're just in time. This is the man who committed the hit and run." Victoria quickly added, "Yes, I can testify. Sincere stole my car, drove it out, and hit someone. The car is parked in my garage right now." Others also stepped forward to testify, urging the police to take me away immediately. However, the police didn't even glance at me. They walked straight towards Julian. "Julian Vance, based on our investigation, we found that you are connected to last night's hit-and-run incident. Please come with us." Chapter 4. No one expected things to unfold like this. They were all dumbfounded. People quickly asked, "Officers, are you sure you haven't made a mistake?" Even Mrs. Green spoke up for Julian. "Yes, this young man was worried about my health last night and stayed with Ms. Bellwether to keep me company all night. How could such a kind person be the one who hit my granddaughter? There must be some misunderstanding." Seeing so many people speaking up for him, Julian immediately regained his confidence. He calmed his racing heart and declared defiantly, "Are you police officers bribed by Sincere Clark? Why else would you ignore the facts and maliciously frame an innocent person?" He quickly shot Victoria a meaningful look. The two were already in the same boat. Even without Julian saying anything, Victoria couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Otherwise, if the investigation traced back, not only would Julian face prison time, but she wouldn't escape consequences either. Abandoning her image of a perfect woman, she shouted loudly, "Everyone, come look, the police are arresting people randomly without any evidence. How can we trust them after this?" The commotion had already attracted a crowd. Now Victoria's shout drew even more onlookers, unaware of the truth, completely packing the hospital room. Especially upon hearing claims of the police making wrongful arrests, the crowd erupted, murmuring and criticizing. They looked ready to drown the officers in verbal attacks right then and there. Julian and Victoria exchanged smug glances. The police officers' faces, however, turned grim. Seeing the situation about to spiral out of control, they decisively presented the dashcam footage. When the factual evidence is clear, what more is there to argue about? On the screen, Julian's face was flushed red, his eyes glazed with drunkenness. After hitting Teresa Green and sending her flying, he showed no remorse or fear. Instead, he looked arrogant and defiant, a stark contrast to the heartbroken accuser he had pretended to be moments before. The crowd was stunned into silence. No one had expected this twist, followed by another twist. For a moment, not a single person dared to utter another word. Julian and Victoria stared wide-eyed in disbelief. They couldn't fathom how the video evidence, which they thought they had thoroughly disposed of immediately, could suddenly appear before everyone, especially in the hands of the police. The two looked at each other in dismay, cold sweat breaking out on their backs. Seeing the crowd silenced, the police officer snorted coldly and warned, "If anyone dares to obstruct our law enforcement duties again, you will be arrested according to the law." These onlookers were mostly just there for the spectacle, the gossip. No one wanted to get involved. Hearing the threat of arrest, they quickly backed away, clearing a path for the police. Julian lost all his earlier calm composure and instantly panicked. He tried to grab onto Victoria. "Victoria, save me, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to..." But before he could finish, two officers firmly escorted him away. It all happened too suddenly, neither of them was prepared. Victoria was completely panicked, only able to subconsciously cry out, "Julian, don't worry, wait for me. I'll definitely find a way to get you out." Hearing her words, I couldn't help but let out a derisive laugh. Victoria whipped her head around, suddenly realizing something. She demanded sharply, "It was you?" She had destroyed all the evidence immediately. There was no way the police could have traced the vehicle so quickly, let alone retrieved the dashcam footage from it. The only person capable of doing this, besides her and Julian, was me. Chapter 5. I smiled slightly, saying nothing. I knew Victoria cared so much about Julian that she would definitely try to destroy the dashcam recorder first thing. Unfortunately for her, she was clueless about cars. Plus, her staying out all night yesterday to deceive Mrs. Green gave me ample time. As expected. Although Victoria had deleted all the videos from the dashcam's memory card, she forgot about the cloud storage backups. That gave me the chance to strike back. To prevent Julian from committing suicide out of guilt, like he did in the previous life, I made a point of going to the police station early this morning. I gave my statement, recorded my testimony, and handed over the evidence I had collected last night. Only then did I come to the hospital to visit Teresa. Even my earlier insistence on calling the police was purely a delaying tactic, a smokescreen, all to catch them completely off guard when the police arrived. Victoria quickly processed this, finding it almost unbelievable that the me who had always obeyed her every whim would backstab her like this. Her eyes widened in confusion. "Why?" "Sincere, you promised me you'd help Julian cover up the truth. Why would you do this?" I tugged at the corner of my mouth, retorting, "So, if you asked me to take the fall for Julian, I should just obediently do it?" Victoria looked at me as if it were perfectly natural. "Well, yes. Isn't that how you always were? Whatever I asked you to do, you'd always obey. Besides, this time I even promised to make our relationship public and give you a wedding. What reason did you have not to listen?" I couldn't help but laugh. Yes, the old me desperately wanted the whole world to know about our relationship. Precisely because of that, whatever she asked, whether I liked it or not, I fulfilled her every request. But all of that was predicated on love. Now that I no longer loved her, I naturally wouldn't do anything for her. Unfortunately, Victoria hadn't realized this yet. I couldn't be bothered with her and turned to leave. Victoria tried to stop me, but Mrs. Green suddenly rushed forward and grabbed her arm tightly. "Where do you think you're going?" Even though Mrs. Green was older and slower to process things, based on my conversation with Victoria just now, she had pieced together the truth. Moreover, the police had already presented evidence and taken Julian away. Even if she were slow, she realized everything that happened today was a setup orchestrated by Victoria and Julian, all designed to shift the blame onto me, making me the scapegoat. Remembering the video of her granddaughter being violently struck by Julian like a broken kite, and realizing she had almost wronged her savior, mistaking her enemies for benefactors, Mrs. Green's eyes burned red with hatred, a fierce fire raging within her. Her hands, calloused from years of labor, clamped down on Victoria like claws. "And I thought you were a kind person. Turns out you conspired with that man to deceive me, and you slandered Teresa's savior. Then, wicked woman, I'll tear your face apart." With Julian taken away, Mrs. Green couldn't confront the main culprit, but she wasn't about to let his accomplice get away. Saying this, she reached out to scratch Victoria's face. Victoria, spoiled and pampered all her life, had never encountered such ferocity. She immediately shrieked, crying help. Unfortunately, the drama had ended. The only ones left were the medical staff she had previously used as pawns and made fools of. Now, they wouldn't even lift a finger to help her. Not kicking her while she was down was already generous. Why would they care about her plight? Seeing she couldn't rely on the medical staff, Victoria screamed my name. "Sincere, get over here, hurry up and get this old hag off me." However, I just smiled at Mrs. Green. Be my guest. Then, I walked away without looking back. Chapter 6. That evening, as I was packing my belongings, Victoria burst in, her face covered in bandages, fuming with anger. Seeing me, she immediately launched into a tirade. "Sincere Clark, Are you even a man? I called for your help today. Why did you just stand there and watch? Did you enjoy seeing me get beaten up by that old woman? Is this how a husband behaves?" Her words were laughable. Before, I tried everything, but she refused to acknowledge me as her husband. Now that we had signed divorce papers, she suddenly blurted out that I was her husband. I ignored her and continued packing. Only then did Victoria notice the living room filled with bags and bundles of all sizes. She kicked the nearest bag in frustration, sending small trinkets scattering across the floor. Victoria froze for a second, looking at the star-shaped string lights, the oil painting, and various small animal figurines on the floor. She finally realized these were all the little things we had bought together over the years to decorate our home. She recalled something, pursed her lips, and muttered, "Why are you messing with all this junk?" In a distant memory, I could vaguely recall Victoria's shy yet joyful expression when she bought these items. She had said, sincere, "This is the first house we've bought together. Every part of it should be decorated by us. I hope that whenever we see these decorations in the future, we'll remember the joy and excitement of this moment." Unfortunately, times had changed. Not only Victoria, but even I had almost forgotten that memory. I stuffed the items back into the bag, smiling ironically. Since it's junk, naturally it's being thrown away. Clearly, Victoria's mind wasn't on this. She stared at the decorations, nodding vaguely. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, her brow furrowed again. "First thing tomorrow morning, go find that old woman and get her to sign a letter of forgiveness for Julian. As long as you get that letter, I'll forgive you for abandoning me today." As if afraid I'd push my luck, she added, "As for you backstabbing me and Julian, well, that depends on whether your future performance satisfies me. Otherwise, don't even think about me going public with our relationship, let alone dream of having a wedding." Victoria wore a high and mighty, magnanimous expression. It just made me want to laugh. What delusion made her think I would still obey her every command as I used to? As I thought it, I voiced it. Victoria clearly hadn't expected me to be so ungrateful after she'd already offered me a way down. Her face flushed and paled rapidly. However, when her gaze fell upon the ceramic dolls and abstract oil paintings, she forcibly suppressed her anger again, patiently saying, "I know you're angry because I was too good to Julian before, which is why you foolishly reported him to the police. I understand. After all, you only did it because you care about me too much. I promise you, after Julian gets out, I'll keep my distance from him. How about that?" Even now, she still thought everything I did was about competing with Julian for her. I couldn't help laughing. "Victoria, you've misunderstood. Reporting Julian was purely because I couldn't stand seeing him get away with his crimes after doing something so terrible. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. As for you, whether you end up with Julian or some Jason or whoever, it has nothing to do with me." Victoria turned a deaf ear, assuming I was still sulking. "Don't I know you? You're just playing hard to get. If you really didn't care about me, why didn't you report me to the police for maliciously destroying evidence and forcing you to commit perjury? I know you still have feelings for me. That's why I'm giving you this chance to redeem yourself. As long as you get that letter of forgiveness, I can pretend none of this ever happened. Sincere, this is your only chance." Chapter 7. Victoria's usual tactic for controlling me was exploiting my unwavering love for her. She thought that because I only reported Julian and not her, it meant I couldn't bear to let her go, that I was still attached. She didn't know the reason I let her off the hook was because I knew the most important person in her heart was Julian. Only a betrayal by Julian himself would truly devastate her. That's why I didn't hand over all the evidence to the police. Besides, I believed Julian, who couldn't handle hardship, would soon break under pressure. I looked at Victoria and said, word by word, "In Julian's current predicament is entirely his own fault. Since I didn't help him cover up the truth, I certainly won't persuade the victim's family to forgive him." Seeing that even humbling herself like this hadn't made me yield, Victoria could no longer maintain her facade. She pointed her finger at my nose and cursed. "Fine, Sincere Clark, you took my money. Not only did you refuse to help, but you backstabbed me. Do you believe I can kick you out of the company immediately?" So much time had passed, yet Victoria still thought the document she signed that night was an asset transfer agreement. How could I have been so blind back then, to fall for someone so unbelievably foolish and vicious? I offered a kind reminder. "So why don't you try and see who the company truly cannot function without?" My words instantly silenced Victoria. Even if she hated to admit it, she had to acknowledge that the company's current success was almost entirely the result of my hard work and effort. That was why Julian had repeatedly tried to push me out of the company. But Victoria had never agreed. Realizing she could no longer control me, Victoria flew into a rage, spitting out threats. "Do you think besides that forgiveness letter I can't find connections to get Julian out? Let me tell you, if I had the means to destroy all the evidence back then, I have the means to get him out completely unscathed now." With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I decisively contacted someone to come over and dispose of all this junk properly. In the following days, Victoria poured all her energy into dealing with Julian's situation, leaving her no time to bother me. I was happy for the peace and quiet, after finding a new place to live and settling everything. While urging my lawyer to speed up the divorce proceedings, I began the process of separating assets from the company. 7 years ago, when Victoria and I decided to start the business together, 80% of the initial capital came from me. Most of the business resources and clients were also secured through my efforts, one by one. Now, hearing that I was planning to leave the company and draw a clear line with Victoria, clients overwhelmingly stated that wherever I went, their contracts would follow. Even the client I had drinks with on the night of the incident reached out to me, saying bluntly, "If your boss wasn't Victoria Bellwether, I would have signed that project contract with you long ago." Seeing my confusion, he smiled and explained, "Doesn't everyone in the industry know that this company got to where it is today mainly because of you? That blind Victoria let that incompetent hanger-on Julian meddle in every project. Deadlines got dragged out, quality dropped. The industry has been unhappy for a while now. No matter how much I believed in your abilities, I worried that if the project fell into Julian's hands, something would go wrong. That's why I hesitated. But thankfully you've seen the light now, so my worries are gone." Saying this, he took out a contract. It was the very project I had longed for. Thinking back on how many sleepless nights I spent, how much effort I poured into securing this partnership, only to be repeatedly overlooked, I had thought it was due to my own lack of ability, constantly revising proposals, striving for perfection. I never imagined the obstacles in my path weren't my capabilities. But Victoria and Julian, I smiled with relief and acceptance, pushing the contract back towards him. Chapter 8. The client looked at me, puzzled. I smiled and explained, "Please wait a moment. Let me sign this on the day my new company officially opens." The client paused, then burst into laughter, nodding approvingly. Later, I was busy preparing for my new company, and Victoria and Julian gradually faded from my life. I only occasionally heard snippets of news. Victoria's former connections, afraid of being implicated in Julian's case if it blew up, were avoiding her. Meanwhile, Julian, seeing that Victoria hadn't managed to bail him out, and facing the lawsuit I'd filed through my lawyer to recover marital assets he'd received, being naturally suspicious and timid, Julian assumed Victoria had abandoned him and furiously confessed everything. He not only revealed Victoria's malicious destruction of evidence and her coercion of me to commit perjury, but he also exposed Victoria's entire network of contacts, connections, and resources. Victoria was called in for questioning. However, since the charges against her weren't severe, she was released relatively quickly. But the connections she had dragged down with her were furious. Unable to retaliate against Julian, who was already incarcerated, they began to take revenge fiercely on Victoria, who was outside. Suddenly, the funding chain for Victoria's company broke. Her properties were seized. Even the house and luxury car she had previously bought for Julian were reclaimed as my assets due to my lawsuit. By the time Victoria realized what was happening, she had lost everything. Betrayed by her beloved, her assets vanishing into thin air almost overnight, Victoria couldn't handle the blow and completely broke down. She came looking for me, begging me to save her. The once radiant and vibrant woman now looked haggard, as if aged 10 years. Tears streamed down her face. Sincere, we had 7 years together. You can't just stand by and watch me perish for the first time. I found Victoria utterly pathetic. I had once given her my whole heart, built up the entire company, the entire home for her. She had scoffed at it, her heart and eyes filled only with Julian. Now that Julian had abandoned her, she turned back to me begging for mercy. But she still hadn't understood one crucial thing. No one waits forever in the same place for someone else. Moreover, between her and me lay a deep-seated hatred, a blood feud spanning 2 lifetimes. I looked at her, my face expressionless. Victoria, you are in this situation today because you reaped what you sowed. You can't blame anyone else. She froze, utterly shocked that even after humbling herself so much, I remained so cold-hearted. The astonishment on her face was impossible to hide. She wanted to say more, but when her eyes met the ice in mine, she belatedly realized that I was no longer the young man who used to chase after her, begging for just a backward glance. A wave of panic involuntarily washed over Victoria. She wanted to try and appease me, but old habits kicked in, and she couldn't stop herself from sneering, "Sincere, who do you think you are? Don't forget, husband and wife are one entity. If the company collapses, do you think you'll fare any better? Those people won't let me off, and they certainly won't let you off either. I know you're resourceful and still have considerable assets under your name. I advise you to step in quickly and help the company weather this storm. Otherwise, what awaits you definitely won't be a good end, however." I gave her no further chance to speak. I directly pulled out the divorce certificate and slapped it down in front of her. Chapter 9. Victoria stared blankly for a moment. Seeing the names on the certificate, her expression instantly shattered. She mumbled, "No, impossible. I never agreed. How could you possibly have this?" Then, as if realizing something, "Sincere Clark, you dared to forge this?" Before the triumphant look of having caught me could fully form on her face, I bluntly reminded her, "Victoria, don't forget what you personally signed on the night you asked me to provide a false alibi for Julian." Victoria frowned, struggling to recall. Wasn't it just an asset transfer? The next second, her eyes flew wide open. "You tricked me into signing divorce papers? You set me up?" I shook my head. "You were the one who didn't read carefully." But how could Victoria believe that? Her earlier frantic efforts to help Julian, disregarding all consequences, were driven not just by her feelings for him, but largely by the existence of our marriage certificate. As long as that certificate existed, she and I were bound together. No matter how unwilling I might be, I would be obligated to be her fallback. But now Julian had betrayed her without hesitation, and I had completely expelled her from my world. An unprecedented wave of terror instantly enveloped her. Victoria alternated between furiously accusing me of planning everything from the start, just waiting for her to foolishly walk into the trap, and vehemently claiming that I was the one she loved most, that she had only been temporarily blinded by Julian, begging me to forgive her just this once for the sake of their many years together. But a heart that has died cannot be revived. I threw her out of my house without hesitation. To prevent Victoria from becoming murderously deranged again, like in my past life, seeking to kill me out of hatred, I even specifically arranged for someone to keep tabs on her movements at all times. However, what I didn't expect was, this time her target wasn't me. On the opening day of my new company, just after I had signed the long-awaited partnership contract, Mrs. Green suddenly called. On the other end, Mrs. Green's aged voice carried both apology and gratitude. "Young man, Teresa woke up. She said she wants to meet you. I was wondering, would you be willing?" I thought for a moment and agreed. When I arrived at the hospital, I saw Victoria being escorted away by the police. Her hair was disheveled. She looked like a madwoman. Even though she was restrained, she kept shouting incessantly, "I'll kill her, it's all her fault, she ruined everything from." Snippets of conversation among bystanders. I learned that Victoria, in her crazed state, had actually tried to kill Teresa Green to vent her hatred. Fortunately, as a precaution, I had warned Mrs. Green and the medical staff to watch out for Victoria. I never expected that this whole ordeal would turn out to be a blessing in disguise, leading to Teresa waking up. This time Victoria was caught red-handed attempting assault with a weapon. I knew she had no chance of escape anymore. Entering the hospital room, Mrs. Green looked at me with shame, clearly still bothered by the earlier incident. She stammered for a long time, finally letting out a deep sigh. "Child, I'm sorry. I never should have listened to them and doubted you. Not only did you not blame me, but you saved Teresa a second time. I truly don't know how I can ever repay you." I shook my head. "Grandma, it's all in the past. I've already forgotten about it. If you truly want to repay me, then just take good care of yourself and Teresa. As long as you two are well, that's better than anything." Mrs. Green wanted to say more, but Teresa, on the bed, struggled to sit up. Mrs. Green immediately turned her attention to helping her. Teresa's face was still pale, but her spirit seemed good. She looked me over and asked, "You're sincere, Clark?" I nodded. A smile touched her lips. "I had a very long dream. In the dream I was supposed to die, but for some reason you suddenly appeared, and my fate seemed to change because of it." Seeming to find her own words absurd, Teresa smiled sheepishly. "Maybe you won't believe me, but the feeling was truly uncanny. I suddenly thought of Teresa's fate in my previous life. The only difference between the two lives was that I had warned the medical staff about Victoria. It seemed likely that Teresa's death in the past life was also linked to Victoria." I smiled. "None of that matters now. All you need to know," I said, "is that they have received the punishment they deserved, and we have been given a new life. The future is ours." End.